Sejam bem-vindos ao Nerdologia. Meu nome é Felipe Figueiredo, formado em História, colunista, podcast, youtuber e professor. E hoje nós estamos recebendo Neville Page, ele que é designer de muitas das criaturas que vocês já viram por aí, artista, atua em cinema e televisão, ele nasceu no Reino Unido, cresceu nos Estados Unidos e, além de atuar em cinema e televisão, em várias franquias que a gente vai ver por aqui, ele também é professor e consultor. E aqui no Brasil ele gravou 2 masterclass para vocês, que vocês têm o cupom de desconto do Nerdologia. Vocês vão lá em saga.com.br/Neville, tá? Usa o cupom Nerdologia, vocês vão ter um desconto. Page, you told me to call you Neville. Sorry.
You call me whatever comes to mind, even if it's bad.
Neville, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I want to start our conversation by the start.
Okay.
You know, you are the son of artists.
Yeah.
And but at first you were a teacher. You studied design and then you went to Switzerland to be a teacher.
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to go to Hollywood and work in cinema and movies with creation, with artists, with art?
It started at a very young age. And strangely enough, the one movie that really motivated me to want to go to Hollywood, sort of, was The Exorcist.
Okay.
And keep in mind, I was very young when my mother took me to see The Exorcist in the theaters. I was maybe 7. And if you know the movie The Exorcist, it is a scary, scary movie.
It's not a movie for a 70-year-old.
It is not. It is not. But you know what? It turns out it was a perfect movie because what I saw, I was horrified, still am. But what I saw was the power of visual imagery and the power of makeup and how it can scare you. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to learn how to create makeup so that I could scare, I guess, my mother for doing this to me. And back in Chicago, back in the early 70s, there was a makeup kit called the Dick Smith Makeup Kit. And it was how to create prosthetics for yourself and turn yourself into a zombie or a possessed demon. And why my parents chose to indulge me and buy that as well, as I think about it, maybe my parents had something else in mind for me. But that was the beginning of the journey. It didn't mean that now at 7, I was going to move to Hollywood and do this. It just sort of planted the seed, unbeknownst to me. I really did not know how specific that film was to make me realize the power of cinema, the power of storytelling, and the power of the artist being able to move an audience, either in fear or in happiness or tears, whatever it is. And I just love that. And I still, to this day, that's why I do what I do.
But between you were 7 years old and you started working movies, a lot of things happened. You were to Switzerland, etc. And when you were a industrial design teacher, at that moment, what motivated you to change your career? Besides that, you know, that memory from The Exorcist when you were 7 years old and the makeup kit.
You can either see that life sort of has things planned for you, or that things are occurring in your life and you react to them. I'm more of the latter, where things were happening and it's an opportunity, and you see that, oh, maybe I can go this route, and then that opens a door for another opportunity, and so your life just becomes what it is. But I think you always have a goal in mind, a trajectory in your vision of what you see yourself doing. I imagined that I wanted to work, not necessarily in Hollywood, I'll do quotes there, because I didn't know that you could do it. People were doing it, but I was just a kid in Chicago with no real money or access to that world. I was going to live in Chicago the rest of my life playing games. So there was nothing other than pretending to working in movies. But when I saw Star Wars as a 12-year-old, that sort of planted the seed of, oh, people are making these movies, real people. And I got the Art of Star Wars book, and I saw that there were people drawing pictures sculpting creatures. And I thought, these are real people making, maybe that's what I can do. But I unfortunately interpreted it as, if I want to be in Star Wars, if I want to have that experience, it would mean I should probably be an actor, because then I could dress up as Darth Vader, be on the set, and that's maybe what I should do. So I decided to study acting, and I was accepted to a school called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in California. I'm living in Chicago, so I moved to California to become an actor.
You were 17, right?
Around 17, yeah. And so that experience of coming to Los Angeles and getting an agent, which is what you typically do, and you hit headshots and you try and get auditions, but what it really means is you got to get a job as a waiter somewhere, probably. So I became a fabulous waiter, and I barely acted. And I thought, this is really frustrating because I really want to be in movies. Not for ego. It was never about, I want to be a star. I want to be seen. It was, I want to be on the set of Star Wars. And I kind of have a funny story about that with J.J. Abrams. But I was frustrated that I couldn't get the craft to happen. I could pretend to be a character at home alone, but that's pretty boring. And that's when I had this moment of realization where I thought, I don't want to be an actor because I'm not in control of my career. None of us are really in control, but I wanted a little more control.
Yeah.
And that's when, because of where I was living in Pasadena, California, that's where the acting school was, there was another school that someone told me about called the Art Center College of Design. And that school is known for its industrial design education. It is also known for some of the people in the Art of Star Wars book. That's where they went to school. And I connected the dots and thought, well, this is serendipity. So I went up to the campus, it's on a hill, and I saw the gallery sold. Because it was basically a gallery full of Star Wars-like fantasy things. A lawnmower of the future, a car of the future, an airplane of the future. I thought, I don't even understand how this is done. I want to know how to do it. I submitted the portfolio. I didn't have a portfolio. So I made up a portfolio in the hopes that they would accept me. I got accepted, and thank goodness I got a scholarship. We had no money, and it wasn't a cheap school. And getting the opportunity to have a portion of my tuition paid was the reason I went there, the ability to go there. And it's part of the reason why I'm so committed to education in different ways today is because the cost of education, I'm slightly getting off topic here, but I'll come back.
Feel free.
The cost of education is so high, especially now.
Yeah.
But the world is different in how you access education. And I'm a firm believer that the knowledge I have and the knowledge that other people have from experience or your own willingness to educate yourself should be available to anyone. Not anyone that can afford it, but just anyone, because the greatest ideas are in all of us. And it's a crime that so many people don't have the ability to access a way to express it. And when I come here to Brazil via Saga, I've been here numerous times now.
Yeah.
And being with Saga as an educator and seeing these young students who are of a different culture and a different background and different opportunities different from what I observe in the United States, it punctuates and galvanizes for me the importance of making sure that these young kids, or old, it doesn't matter the age, have access to the same information that somebody has a lot of money as well. So that's the reason I keep coming back to Brazil. Not that Brazil is a broke country, but I think we all can just look around and go, not every person who has great ideas has access to even Saga. So how do we, as a culture, as a society, as a human race, how do we make this available? So when I was learning at Art Center and I had this opportunity because of a scholarship, that was sort of the beginning of my journey of loving education. I was learning, and I really was appreciative of that experience, but I was also kind of a teacher's aide, if you use that term, where you're sort of selected or you just choose to make yourself available. And I wanted to help other students who were coming in, and I might have a little bit of information to help the teacher. And that was sort of the first experience of teaching and helping others and sharing your personal wealth. Wealth in terms of not money, because I had none, but knowledge. Yeah, and wealth is not money. Wealth is wisdom. Wealth is experience. Wealth is helping somebody else not make the same mistakes you did in life. That's true wealth.
About that knowledge, and you mentioned that when you when you first showed up in school, you said, "I have no idea how to make these things, but I want to learn it." Today, after 30 years of experience, I want to talk about your creation process.
Okay.
First of all, you are most known for being a creature designer.
Correct.
When you design a creature, an alien or any type of creature, the Cloverfield monster, how do you deal with real life anatomy and biology? Because real life biology can also be inspiring, but also can be a limit because you're creating a creature from another world. So how do you deal with real life biology and anatomy in your creation work?
It's a great question and wonderfully astute observation about when you are using real life as a reference point to create something we've never seen before. It's inspiring and limiting. And the way that I deal with that, and I think it's the way most designers of any category of design, whether it's graphic design, architectural design, it doesn't really matter what the subject matter is. It's your approach to the subject. My background is industrial design. If I was born to be a creature designer, I may not have had the same results that I do because I would have started my philosophical thinking as to how you approach solving a problem. But because of my background, you approach a product very differently than you would approach a creature in terms of the process of design. You have to think about things like engineering, manufacturing, safety when you're doing a product, because it's a real thing that a consumer must be able to use repeatedly and safely, et cetera, et cetera. With a creature, well, none of that matters. In fact, you're supposed to damage an audience, at least in your mind, if you want to scare them with it. But it's really quite simple. Your job is to be the expert in the room. So you must study about anatomy. You must study things that pertain to the anatomy of a specific creature. So let's say the Banshees from Avatar. Because that for me, specifically the Banshees from Avatar, is a great case study of I'm just starting my career as a creature designer. And James Cameron wants flying creatures to be innovative and special and new and unique. And I'm an industrial designer working with some of Hollywood's greatest talents who are really proper creature designers. I was not a proper creature designer. I was a guy who wanted to be, who won the golden ticket, if you will. And I'm in the room with other people who are creature designers. It's very intimidating, but very inspiring. What I discovered for me was I wasn't trying to figure out a way to be capable at my job. I was looking for a way to be of value to James Cameron's vision. And the value was that I was thinking like an engineer, not this one. That's a whole different way of thinking. I was thinking as if I was an engineer of biology. I guess I was pretending to be God. And what that means is you must know how birds fly, how animals fly in general, which means you must know a little bit about aerodynamics and the physics behind flight in general, which then means you must know how the anatomy works for flapping or gliding, the type of bird, a hummingbird versus a gliding type bird. So all of these things it's the classic, the more you know, the less you know. So as you open up this door of, I'm going to learn about flight, you realize there's so much to learn. So this is where I think the difference was with my approach as an industrial designer versus a traditional creature designer. I remember vividly, and it was right to me. It made sense, and everyone around me was like, what is he doing? So the shared lunchroom in James Cameron's office, the kitchen with the fridge and so on, everyone's preparing their lunches, and I'm in the sink with a chicken. I just went to the store and I got a chicken, just a small one, and I needed to understand, because we've all eaten chicken and looked at chickens, but have you paid attention to the exact anatomy? It's weird if you eat your dinner that way.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that eats my dinner that way. So as I'm cutting through something, I was like, oh, is that the sternocleidomastoides? What muscle group is that? So I look kind of strange as I'm eating, but I'm paying attention and studying the best way I can, and the access I had was the grocery store chicken. And then you peel the skin off and you get down to the muscles, and you peel the muscles off and you get down to the bones, and you see tendons, and you're looking at your books. That's my lunch break. And I felt my responsibility and my job. I wasn't doing it for fun, for attention. I was doing it so that Jim felt like when I was drawing the Banshee was getting the right results. Point being,
Jim, it's James Cameron.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're like that.
Yeah, okay.
JC and I. It's a funny thing when you meet someone like that, because meeting James Cameron at his home, and I'm a huge fan. The first thing is I'm a fan of all these people that I work for, whether it's James Cameron or J.J. Abrams. I go into a room thinking, I love your work. This is amazing. And I still, to this day, I'm so profoundly aware of the serendipitous, wonderful opportunity to be working with my heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But, this guy, James Cameron, walks in the room and says, hey, I'm Jim. So I was like, is that what we call you, Jim? Jimbo? How familiar do I want to get here?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's Jim currently. So what I'm getting at is you have to know as much as you possibly can about the rules of stuff, anatomy in this case, bird flight specifically, so that you can start to bend the rules and even start to break the rules. Because now I know the limits. And then you have to get to the point of going, okay, what's the balance of plausibility on screen? Because what I would like to do is I'm going to break the rule completely. But if I break it, but I've sustained the plausibility of the organism, then there's this wonderful balance of I'm able to create something new, but it feels right enough that the audience will buy it. And just as important, you create something that is refined enough, both cosmetically, aesthetically, but in terms of its biology and physics, so that when you give it to a really capable animator at Weta, ILM, whomever, the mill, they get your asset, they get the model, they get the design, and it's hopefully so well thought out that their job is not only easier, and their job is hard, but their job is easier and much more pleasurable because they're getting something that somebody else really worked hard at, and you hand it over, and they're now empowered, excited, capable of doing their best. You don't necessarily go into creating with that in mind normally, but I think it's wise to always consider, okay, I'm given this task of creating something, and it's going to go through the hands of so many people. And if you want to really panic, and you think about Avatar, and I didn't think this way, thank God, but if you think millions of dollars are going to be spent on what I'm making a decision about right now, that's not a good way to think when you're working. You just do your best, and if it's good enough, they'll throw money at it to make it that much better. So whenever I see the Banshee, or whenever somebody says to me, my God, your work is amazing, which is a wonderful thing to hear, I always know, and I try and preface the appreciation with just know that I was a small part at the beginning, and why you love it probably has little to do with me and a lot more to do with animators, riggers, texture artists, lighting artists, directing, sound design, all the things. It's the sum of the parts that make something great.
Your work is amazing,
Well,
but
thank
you anticipated my next question, because in your design process, if the end result it's going to be a digital result, like in Avatar, or it's going to be a practical effect, like a mask or something, does that alter your process? Your process needs to be a little different if it's going to be digital or practical?
It can alter it profoundly to where you just don't even use the same process. So if I was to compare, say, a fully realized digital monster that is a large scale, that you can't even build a reference model that you would put on set for the purposes of lighting it, and that then is a visual reference for visual effects, to look at that and go, when we do our digital, we can see that model. Sometimes you don't even have that ability, or that you're not able to create that because it's not in the budget or the time frame. So it's just a tennis ball on a stick kind of thing, which we've all seen in the behind the scenes. So then with that, from a concept design standpoint, I would say that my process is pretty much the same, which is whether it's a makeup that is practical or a digital creature that's kaiju and huge, my attitude is always the same in the philosophy of creating and the process philosophically of creating. But the technical choices vary a lot. So as an example, if we're doing a makeup of an alien in Star Trek, and it's going to be rubber glued to somebody's face.
Mm-hmm.
And even there's a distinction of if it's a famous actor who's going to get something glued to their face versus a background alien who has a whole mask just pulled over them, the approach technically can be very different. One, hopefully because it's background, doesn't have to be as expensive. The actor who they're paying money for, so you see that person through the makeup. Then you have to design the makeup so that it doesn't bury the actor. And you're always considering designing a makeup so that the actor can perform. I mean, there's nothing worse for anyone who has a job to do and they're put in a costume or something restrictive where they don't feel comfortable or even able to do it. So the approach of doing a practical makeup is all about the relationship with the performer, the relationship with the makeup department, and then your relationship with the character you're conceiving. So first step, which is always the same, get to understand the character from the script, from the narrative. And that's your job, is to make sure that it satisfies that. Technically then, when you find out that it's a rubber thing glued onto somebody, then you approach it the way that makes sense for that specific thing. And oftentimes it can just be a pencil drawing that you give to a makeup artist, and they then do the clay sculpture on top of a life cast of the performer, or it's a digital sculpture done on a scan of the actor, the list goes on for the or, and you look at the budget, you look at the time, and that's how you're making those decisions. So it can be vastly different and identical at the same time.
You mentioned a pencil drawing, you mentioned a digital sculpt. What are your preferred methods? You know, if I say to you, do as you wish, you know, we have the budget, you have, you know, free reign, do as you wish. How do you prefer to approach your work?
I would first say the most important thing is to fly me to Bali, because I'll probably do my best work there.
Okay.
And then we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
You may get nothing, but I'll be happy.
At the beach in Bali, you have a pencil or a tablet.
Fair enough. You're a tough producer. You're going to make me answer the question. I would have a pencil and paper. And sometimes, depending on what you're doing, you pick the right tool for the job. So if you said to me, "Hey Neville, I want you to make a piece of furniture," and I'm like, "Okay," and you're asking me what tool would I use? Like, well, what is it you want? I'd like a wooden chair. Okay, then I'm going to grab a saw and a hammer. But if you say I'd like a concrete countertop, then I'm going to pick different tools. So in a similar way, if you say I need a human alien makeup, head to toe, whether it's Giger's Alien or something from a Guillermo del Toro film where it's a full human being in rubber, I would probably use ZBrush, which is a digital sculpting tool. And I would start with an existing human body. Let's pretend for a moment we don't have the actor cast, so we don't know their exact proportions. So I would start with a generic existing human body. I wouldn't start sculpting the human form from scratch because that's a waste of time. I'm not being paid to do that. So I don't want to waste their time and money. So that is a very different thing in terms of choosing a tool or a technique. And it's based on the brief, what you've been asked to do. And then there are times, and ironically, I'll bring up a production which not many people reference, but Piranha 3D, the movie. That movie I did immediately after J.J. Abrams' Star Trek Into Darkness, I believe. And you think of the budget, you think of the marketing of those films, vastly different. But, and you didn't ask this question, I put the exact same energy and effort into doing a piranha fish as I did the Banshee, as I did anything for JJ, as I did for anything for Ridley, because it warrants it. Your own value, personal value of I will always do a good job. It doesn't matter what the job is. And if I'm digging a ditch, it's going to be one of the best ditches I've dug because that's just my attitude towards if you're paying me to do something, I'll put my best effort. But I bring that up because the fish in Piranha didn't necessarily warrant a specific technique. And that's where I got to sort of choose for myself. The subject matter wasn't groundbreaking interesting because we knew it needed to look like a piranha. So I wasn't designing from scratch, like invent the most amazing piranha. But what I and other artists tend to do is I'm going to pick a technique that I just enjoy. Okay. And it doesn't matter to the client because they're going to see a pencil drawing or a ZBrush model. They just want results and answers. So they don't really care what you choose. So then you get a chance to go, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while, and it's going to be pleasurable. drawing a fish is fun, but I was at the time using a marker that's kind of like a sumi brush, a Japanese ink brush. And it's just a beautiful technique. So it was all about the fun of the process of drawing, and the drawing was of a fish. So sometimes it's because you want to indulge yourself. And on Star Trek, J.J. Abrams' first Star Trek, we had this one moment where I was designing Nero.
Yeah.
And Nero, performed by Eric Bana, was very exploratory. We were trying to find what the design was. And I did all sorts of Photoshop sketches, all sorts of ZBrush sketches. I was trying all the tools in my toolbox, and I wasn't getting JJ the answer. And sometimes oftentimes, that's the job. Everything is a mistake. Everything is a failure. And that sounds negative. It is not. It takes a while to get to what they want. And everything prior to that is not used. Technically, that is stuff that gets thrown into garbage. Is that a failure? That is the process. You are trying to find it, and all of the stuff which is thrown into garbage is valuable because it gets you to the right answer. So one day, after showing JJ various forms of art to try and come up with what Nero looked like, I had this moment where I thought, it'll be fun to do a pencil drawing. And I did a pencil drawing on cheap paper in my office one night, and I brought it to JJ. And JJ loves, he loves everything, but he loves art. And this was seen as art. I guess it's all art. It doesn't really matter what the medium is, but he saw the pencil sketches like, is that pencil? So, oh yeah. And it was just, I could tell he was enjoying that this was handcrafted. And I'm not sure if that sort of motivated him to go that direction, but that was the done design. Because it was art, because it was a bit more interesting to him, I'm not sure. It could have been that I just happened to nail the design whilst using a pencil. But again, it's not about the material that you use. You're still doing the same thing. But some things are just so nice to go back to. And a pencil in Bali, if anyone's listening, works well for me.
And one of the things that I find most fascinating about your career, and I want to ask you about that because you mentioned Star Trek. You have worked on Avatar. That's a brand new universe.
Yeah.
You worked on Chronicles of Narnia. That was a universe that existed on books, but not yet on movies. And you worked on huge franchises like Alien and Star Trek that had these previous visuals, this previous background. So you work from scratch until you have to respect the background of the franchise. What are the differences in working in these three different kinds of universes? About your freedom, about honoring something that you loved, something that you enjoyed watching. So how it is to work with three different kind of universes?
Can I compliment you first on your great questions?
Thank you.
They're really wonderful and a delight to answer. It's an interesting thing to answer because there's the sort of the technical thing about it, which is how you have to respect the history, the canon of an existing franchise versus the freedom of getting to create something from scratch. And freedom is in terms of this, freedom is an odd thing. When you're given full liberty to do whatever you want, it is daunting. It's like, okay, Neville, or anyone, here's a white piece of paper, and I want you to fill it. And it's like, with what? Anything. It's like, and you'll sit there, and you'll be trying to figure out, should I use a pencil or a pen? Am I going to use words or images? And what are they going to be about? And you're going to burn so much time scratching your head going, I've been given total freedom to do whatever I want. And I do this as an exercise with my students oftentimes, where there's so many times that people complain about, I just want to be able to be given the freedom to do whatever I want. I'm a student and I should be able to design whatever. And once you give that freedom and you force the ability to do whatever you want, some people know exactly and they can jump right into it. And other people like myself are like, now what do I do? So there's a way to react to that with efficiency. And it's an important thing too, which I will touch on if you'd like. The other of being given really specific direction is also a double-edged sword. I know what to do and I am able to execute it immediately. You want a straight line that's 6 inches long. Done. What's next? You've achieved it. The client's happy because the client knew what they wanted. And it seems great. It actually is great. But the downside is it's like, I'm thinking 7 inches and slightly curved, and it would be better if you let me do that. And so then it can be frustrating. And that's an important awareness to have in anything. So you're given freedom, and that's dangerous because what can happen, and it often happens, when somebody says, do anything you want because you're working for me, and you do what you want, that person who had asked that might actually have something in mind. And it's incumbent upon them to be a little bit more specific, and they were not. And they see what you did on that blank piece of paper, and it's like, it's not what I'm thinking. It's like, but you gave me free reign to do whatever I want. Yeah. It's kind of like when somebody says, do I look fat in this outfit? It's like, do I answer that honestly or respectfully? Or, you got to understand the framing of it. But when you are given such specifics, the danger with that is you're not able to really help the client see something that they hadn't imagined. And that's what our job is. And dare I say, for some people, that's what their gift is to be able to give the client something they never asked for. So the most important thing for any artist, because you're going to get a bit of both, is to adapt to either one and to have the maturity, which will come from experience, probably, to also recognize this will make your life a living hell if you don't do this, working in general for whomever, or it will make the experience really pleasurable. You've been hired to do a job. That job that you've been hired to do is to realize somebody else's vision. James Cameron is an amazing artist, cinematographer, just visual artist in general. He can do it all. And so because of that, he knows what he wants. And it's not to say that another director who isn't as articulate with words or visuals doesn't know what they want. They just have a different way of communicating it. Jim, very specific, and doesn't leave you the same room that somebody else might. Not a bad thing. But what you are doing is, if you find that frustrating, because it's like, Jim, I got all these ideas that I want to share with you. One, be appreciative of the fact that you know what you're supposed to do, because somebody was very specific. And two, never forget, this is not your movie. This is not your baby. You are there to babysit. You are there to feed the baby. You are there to help raise the baby. This is not yours. And once you kind of come to terms with that reality, all of a sudden it's like, I'm helping you do the best that you need me to provide. And it becomes a very pleasurable experience when you start to come up against, no, don't do that, Neville, do this. Not frustrated, not upset. I didn't take it personal. Easy, changing gears, and I'm doing what you asked for because you're very specific, and everyone's happy. Everyone comes out on top because of a mental shift towards the reality of what it is. I work for you. Simple as that. I tell my students this all the time. If you're frustrated and you want to be the one that's making those decisions, that's a different career path. That's a different journey, and it's a lot harder because you have to be the general, not the soldier. And there's a lot more responsibility, and it's a harder path to take.
But do you see your creatures as your babies?
I try not to.
Okay.
But if you're a nanny helping raise a child long enough, it does get personal.
Okay.
It really does. And I remember, I told this just the other day, the Banshee, because I'm looking at it here, the flying one. When I worked on that design, and that was probably the one I was most deeply involved with, so it started to feel like my baby. When Jim invited a few of us to a screening at IMAX, it was kind of like the first shot that was done and technically what they call delivered from Weta. So we all went to the IMAX theater, and lights down, screen up, and we're sitting there, and it was the rookery scene, if you remember it. It's where Jake Sully is going to connect himself to one of the Banshees. So it's that whole scene. I was in tears. Tears were coming out of my face because I got to see my baby. I dropped him off at the train station a while ago, and I just picked him up at graduation. And I've seen, this child turn into a man. It really felt like that. It was a weird experience, one that I truly appreciate. But I realized this is this is a real thing, Neville, to pay attention to. Why are you so emotional about this? And it's like I said earlier, it's not because my baby I'm seeing do its thing. My contribution, my little piece of this journey was realized by so many people, so many passionate people, artists, technicians, etc. And this was the byproduct of human effort, this digital image, this thing that doesn't exist, that felt so real, so viable. And I was a part of that. So yes, even though I say, I'm being a hypocrite here, you got to detach yourself from it and know that it's not yours, but you can't help but get connected to things. But when it doesn't turn out like Avatar, and you see your baby on screen who failed college, you know, and you're looking at them, they've been doing drugs and partying instead.
You had to pick up at the precinct, at the police station.
That's right. You're not picking them up at the end of the graduation line. Yeah, you've got bail money. And there's been films like that where I saw the creature that I thought was done appropriately, and they changed it for whatever reason, and genuinely, you feel like they ruined it.
Okay.
You're watching it going, why? What the hell happened? And it is upsetting. But it shouldn't be, because it's not mine. And everything I just said becomes hypocrisy, because I'm saying, let it go. Don't worry about it. But there is an element of, I spent a lot of time doing this. And there's an analogy that I came up with, and I don't want to burn all our time just on this one question, but if you'll bear with me for a second. If I'm working at McDonald's as just a regular employee who's making the Big Mac, somebody comes in and they say, I'd like a Big Mac. And you're like, remember I said about digging a ditch?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make that. I used to work at fast food, so I've made many burgers. I will make the best burger. It will be cooked well. It will, the cheese is going to be lined up. The pickles are going to be in probably some radial pattern, because I love geometry. So I will put my heart and soul in this burger. I wrap it up. I give it to them. They give me cash, and they walk off. They're on their cell phone eating this burger, and I'm looking at them going, focus on the food, man, not the phone. And they eat half the burger, and then they throw it in the garbage and they move on. And I'm like, dude, I put my heart and soul into making that for you. And then you realize, well, they bought it. The exchange has occurred, and it's up to them what they want to do with their money. So once the cash is exchanged with the goods, it is no longer about you. You still do a good job because you have either personal integrity or you have to give them what they paid for. But you have to detach yourself from what they do with it, if they appreciate it or not. And that, for me, is a genuine analogy to working in film. Some executives just have no idea what effort you put into something, and they don't even care. Are they a bad executive? I've got my own opinions about it, but no, it's just, that's not really what they're focused on. And they gave you money. And what did they give you money for? To do what you love. So in a way, it's kind of like, once you, again, have that maturity of realizing, I just got paid probably well to do something I love, draw and sculpt, preferably in Bali. So wherever it is sort of moot. But that really is a privilege. And then you also get the opportunity to have hundreds of thousands of dollars minimum spent on your idea to be realized in some form, even if it turns out poorly. These are all experiences that most people don't get to have. And I am here with you today, talking with you, not because I'm Neville Page, but because I've worked on these things for people doing this. That really is the only reason I'm here. If I was just Neville still in Chicago, it's not like you're going to call up Kyle and say, hey, let's bring him in. I have no idea who he's about or what he's about. But because I won a couple Emmys, because I worked on these major films, it makes me interesting, even though I am no different without those things. So I recognize the byproduct of getting to be privileged in this industry. And I recognize the importance of detaching myself. And I recognize the hypocrisy of what I'm saying, because I get pissed when I see it ruined as well. And that's just the way it goes. But you regulate it.
You get pissed when you see the guy eating the burger looking at his phone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Enjoy that Big Mac that's not good for you to begin with.
And you mentioned gym quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what's your role during the shootings, like in the in the logic of producing the movie, you stay like in a workshop doing your thing. You are on set, maybe correcting stuff, maybe giving advice. What's your role during the production of the movie, during the shooting? You know?
Now I know why this is called nerdologia.
Uh,
Because you are a nerd. You've done your research. You are picking up some nuanced things about how it can be in production. So thank you again. It varies, yes, from job to job. And I've been in a unique position with how I work on films. So when somebody observes me and says, I want to do what you do, I do have to say to my students, be careful, because what I do is relatively unique in that the traditional scenario is you have a portfolio, you get hired in the art department to work on a production. In the art department, you have other people just like you. We're called illustrators. And there's a production designer. And the production designer is manning the visual vision of the film, working with costume, working with the DPs. So they have the overall image of what things need to be in the movie. You, as illustrators, in the art department, which is oftentimes a place within the studio, like 20th Century Fox, where they're going to film this stuff. Mostly the art department illustrators don't go on set, don't interact with the director. You just stay in this one place. And that works fine, obviously. My career started working in film with, and it sounds like I'm name dropping again, but I'll use other names to name drop later, but with Jim. So we were hired, myself, Yuri Bartoli, Wayne Barlow, and Jordu Shell. So it was 4 of us at his house in Malibu. That's not a common way to work in Hollywood at all.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be just a couple months of coming up with ideas for his vision of what Avatar might be, because it wasn't greenlit. It wasn't a real movie yet. So that already changed the scenario, the paradigm shift of being in Jim's house, designing stuff where he would come in every now and then, was a very unusual scenario, still is. But it set the tone for me as to the efficiency of working with the person who's making the decisions. So good or bad, from that point on, I always felt like if there's any opportunity to work directly with the director, I would prefer that. Now, when you come into a production as an illustrator and you make that claim of, these are my needs, I would like Red Bull and I would like, Cheetos on my desk, green M&Ms, and I need to only talk to the director and the performers. You will not work another day in Hollywood, probably ever again. But I make those demands, I make that suggestion, which can be a demand if it's not articulated well, but I do it with the precedent of it really will help you get the most out of people like me. And because of how I've been brought into productions, it has been, again, unique. With J.J. Abrams, for example, because I went straight to Cloverfield right after Avatar. And J.J. himself invited me on board, which meant I was dealing directly with a pretty high-up individual. And I was working with the main executive producer and the director and the writer. That's not normally how it works. So I'm getting spoiled, thinking this is normal. And not only thinking it's normal, realizing it's really quite valuable. So I started to make it a point to try and convince the next production that you should use me the same way, because it's going to benefit you. It's not about me getting the chance to sit next to the director on set. It's about me being of the best value possible. The good news is most of the other productions that I was involved with were with the same people. So I went on to another JJ project and then another one. So it just made sense. And he saw the efficiency in that to the point where, and this really, again, is so unique for someone like myself. There was a moment where they were casting sort of background aliens for one of the Star Treks. I was going to be designing those background aliens. And by background, I'm talking about just masks pulled over people's faces and rubber hands, simple stuff. But it also meant that if I had a vision for a particular type of design, it would possibly make sense. I'm imagining tall and skinny, and the casting people are getting short and wide actors. And so JJ, being a visionary in many ways, said, why didn't you attend the casting sessions? Maybe even talk to the casting people and say, I would like these type of people. Because there's always this thing about eyeballs.
Yeah.
Most of our eyes are the same distance apart, but some people feel like they have eyes that are narrower and wider. And as makeup artists, creature designers that are going to put makeup on people, you're always looking for wide eyes because it gives you more room to build alien stuff on the center. So when I'm given this opportunity, I will look at a ton of headshots and then talk to the casting agent and saying, it'd be great to see these people. And so there I was as just a creature designer in the art department, the director, creator, J.J. Abrams in this case, saying, why don't you sit in on the casting sessions? And I then got involved with that, and we all recognized the value in doing that. That evolved into, let's just cut to today, for example, working on Star Trek TV. I now work in a capacity where I will work directly with almost all of the cast that's going to be involved in a makeup. And what that means is you get the opportunity, in the spirit of efficiency, you get the opportunity to make sure that your actor is comfortable, that they can wear particular contact lenses or not. And I was saying this just the other day, and it's another part of it, that you address their needs as a human being. One actress, I won't mention names, but a lovely person, my questions to her didn't even involve makeup or character design. It was about family. And what I was trying to understand was, how long do you want to spend in a makeup chair getting this glued to you? How long do you want to spend in the makeup chair getting it removed? Because you're going to work a full day in it, and there's more hours before and more hours afterwards. And she was explaining that she wasn't trying to justify. She was just telling me, I got 2 little kids, and one of them's 5, and one of them's just 2 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, I will now adjust my design. Nobody else has seen what it could be, and that's not important. I will design to the parameters that exist before me. And it's just like being an industrial designer again. What's the tooling budget? Who is the market? What are they looking for? Well, this is a person. There's rationale in their lives that they would like to have work for their time frame. I will then design it accordingly. So I removed a lot of big ideas that would take hours away from her life. She didn't know this, and it's not important that she knows this. It's not important that anyone knows this, other than when you're given that opportunity by a director or producer to interact in this way, you solve so many problems that you don't know could be a problem. Just her frustration of, I'm so tired of being in this makeup chair for 4 hours, and now I go on set, the performance that the editor is now dealing with is maybe compromised because she was not accommodated. Not something you ever plan as a creature designer that you're going to go about it this way, but that is my point about giving the opportunity for somebody like myself to be that intimate with performers, intimate with the DP, the director of photography. You just are more valuable.
And we are going to our last stretch of questions here.
Okay.
And I use this time to do Star Trek questions because I like Star Trek.
Oh, great. You're a fan.
But I want to start by, you did Star Trek on movies with J.J. Abrams, and you do Star Trek on TV, on Picard and Discovery. What are the differences? Because in a movie, you have like 2-year production with one director. On TV, you have like one different director each episode. So how it is to work like same universe, but 2 different media?
The biggest difference is time and budget. Usually films have a bit more time and budget, and TV is typically a lot faster paced. And because of that, you have to design quicker, respond quicker, just be more efficient. And when you do that, and it's kind of the, dare I say, the dark underbelly of design, when you have to design quickly, it's hard to do something innovative. It's like if I say to you, let's pretend you're a comedian, and I say to you, tell me a funny joke right now.
Right now.
You're not going to have a chance to make one up and practice it and rehearse it and try it with an audience. You're going to draw from the humor that you have in your personal library. So the same with a designer is, we need a design by noon today, and it is 10 o'clock. And that does happen. So are you going to be as innovative? Are you going to get to really do what you would like to do? And that is something that nobody's ever seen before. No, you're going to have to draw on, quite literally, the resources, the propensities, the habits, the forms and answers that you know.
Or previous designs that you had made.
That is a good point. And that is the caveat. What you just mentioned was a character that we were talking about earlier in the Star Trek book. Sometimes you just got to go into your portfolio, your shoebox of Polaroids, if you will, and say, okay, we haven't picked a design yet. Here's 100 unused aliens that were either part of the developmental process of this particular alien or stuff I've done personally or whatever, things that you own and you can share. And then you just say, pick one and we'll evolve that one. And on a number of occasions, that one gets picked and then that gets turned into an alien. And then if it's a real wonderful thing, it turns into a major alien. And one of those aliens that I did here, I did here in Brazil 12 years ago as a demo, ended up being a main alien on the bridge of Discovery. So you never know where it's going to be born from.
And Star Trek has a huge, very loyal fandom.
Yes.
You know that a lot more than I. And how it is to deal with this fandom, because fandoms can also be toxic. Someone already came up to you and said, oh, you ruined Romulans on the second movie. Mm-hmm. You ruined my childhood or something like that. How is to deal with like a huge fandom like Star Trek?
For the most part, it is really emotionally jarring. Once you start to realize how important something is to other people, you realize the role you play in sustaining that love that they have. So not everyone who's going to work on Star Trek or any franchise has to be a fan of it. You got to be able to work on a film that you have no interest in and still do your best work. But when you do a Star Trek or any kind of fan-based type franchise, you had better recognize who your audience is. And more than that, you had better recognize how meaningful this stuff is to them. And you left out a few expletives from "you ruined my," but I have a few emails that I've saved, slightly out of amusement, slightly out of terror, but mostly from, I get the passion. Yes, the toxic stuff that we see, I really wish that people would invest that energy into something a bit more valuable than the personal point of view of you've ruined something in my life. But that's a point of view that I have. But I think that, quite simply, once you recognize how important something is to other people, you realize that you had better invest the energy into making sure that you're making the right decisions. And that doesn't always work out. And you get the pushback. And sometimes that pushback is aggressive, but it also is something you need to pay attention to. Because usually people say stuff because they're feeling it. And a lot of times people don't say stuff because that's just not their personality. So when you hear the negative, that truth probably exists out there a lot more than you think. And
But I assume that you also received emails with compliments, with love, something like that.
Interestingly enough, yes, I have. And that's also wonderful. But you mostly get, the vocal ones are mostly the ones who are upset. And I understand, because that's easier to respond when you're emotional negatively. And that's a human thing, and that's an interesting thing to observe in life in general. And the fact that we've got all this stuff happening online and the sense of freedom to have an opinion where it's not really necessary or welcome. So, yeah, you get to see humanity crumble under the pressure of the internet. And that's another part of this process of when you're out there and you're given this good fortune of being somebody who gets to work on Star Trek, you have to recognize that some people are going to love you and some people are going to hate you. And sometimes they're going to hate you not because it was your decision. That's a tricky one too. Neville designed this to be this. Oh, thanks for the specific direction. Now I'm screwed because I am a fan of this. And I know that people are going to be mad. Who are they going to be mad at? Who's the creature designer on that? Oh, Neville Page, lead creature designer. That's the guy I'm going to call. And I get those calls and I respect I respect and honor the passion, and I'm going to use that word here, even though that passion comes with expletives. I get it. But yes, what it does and should do is make you recalibrate yourself on the next thing that you're doing within that franchise to be a little more careful. And we had that happen with a number of creatures. So the other ones that we were doing that people are passionate about, you want to be careful not to do too much fan-based motivational design.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you don't want to strip them. You don't want to take, I'm involved with Star Trek for just a short period of how long it's existed.
Yeah.
It would be rude and irresponsible for me to change it because I felt it needed to be different. My job really is realize the vision of somebody else. And in this case, make sure the fans are really, really happy about it. Even if it's different, they can see the difference. And the Klingon torchbearer suit, which is the cover of this book,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of those things I got to do the exercise of you're going to see something different and it might upset you. But when you get into the details, I think you'll realize I'm as passionate as you are about this. Because on that suit are homage and references, Easter eggs, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to things about Klingons, etc. And when I've been in these Star Trek conventions and pointed out those details that nobody maybe hadn't naturally seen in the moment, there was a moment, probably the greatest, and this is the ultimate answer to your question, when you have an audience of a couple thousand Star Trek fans at a Star Trek convention,
Mm-hmm.
talk about feeling naked on stage, and these people are like looking at you like, okay, show us what you got. Explain yourself, Neville. And I started to explain myself and some choices. And there was this moment in the audience, not that I was looking for praise or approval, but it was a moment of praise and approval that confirmed I did the right thing. And it was just an Easter egg about, it was the origin of the Klingon logo.
Mm-hmm.
That's a ballsy one to...
The try one.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, I have nothing to do with that. But there was no history as to where that came from.
Yeah.
So I chose to come up with a history. I chose to do what fans do, and is come up with the canon. And I presented that to them, and there was this round of applause of thank you, because you care. And that was the gift in that moment. They saw, at least with that, I still have those emails of aggression, so somebody
Mhm.
thinks I don't care. But in that group, they saw that I cared about them. And I did. And I didn't do it to win points. I did it because that's what you're supposed to do. And it was a really wonderful moment because it confirmed I'm paying attention, they're appreciating it, not that they need to, but you have to honor a Star Trek fan base,
Yeah.
almost like no other fan base. So anyhow, a bit of a love story.
And you work with J.J. Abrams,
Mhm.
and J.J. did Star Trek and Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned Star Wars at one of your inspirations. So, as a last question, would you want to do something with Star Wars someday?
I begged JJ to let me do Star Wars, and the timing wasn't working out. And then I begged JJ, sort of begged, that, okay, if I'm not working on Star Wars, I'll pay for my own flight just to go to London and stand on the ramp of the Millennium Falcon. I just want to, can I please be there? And I had a really good motivation to be there. My dad, when at the very beginning of this, you mentioned that my parents were with creatives as well.
I said they were artists.
Yeah. My dad, drummer, and my mother was a dancer in theater in England. So my dad being a drummer, his life was about working in the circus at one point. He
Mhm.
was with the Queen's Guards, but then he was working in the circus.
Mhm.
So if you're working in the circus, you're going to meet a lot of interesting people. And those involved clowns. And with clowns, there are often the characterizations of small people. And so some of these small people, they had dwarfism. I want to be PC here. One of them was just this lovely little guy who my dad became friends with. And there's a picture somewhere out there in a box in the attic of me standing next to, and I'm a baby, and I'm about as tall as this guy. And this guy is Kenny Baker.
Yeah.
Kenny Baker is R2-D2.
Yeah.
And he's been playing R2-D2 for quite a while. And I asked JJ, is Kenny Baker going to be R2-D2? And he was there for it. And I thought, at the very least, I really wanted to be there to shake Kenny Baker's hand again. And sadly, none of that worked out. You know why? JJ had me busy on Star Trek. It's like I couldn't go because of Star Trek. So that's how that worked out. So I never have worked on Star Wars. I would work on Star Wars even if I didn't have such a love for it, just because it's a real wonderful franchise, obviously, and it's evolved in such a way that it's an interesting story being told now with Endor and all that. So I'm happy to work on anything that I can contribute if I have talents of any sort into. So I do Star Wars. Do you have a Star Wars thing going on? You available? Are you doing something?
I don't have a Star Wars project for
Oh,
you,
well,
sorry.
okay.
And if I had it, it wouldn't be in Bali. So
So forget it.
But to sum it up, Neville, every time we got a guest here, we ask for a cultural suggestion.
Cultural suggestion?
Yeah, like it would be weird for ask you to give an audience, a film that you love, a book that you love, something that you love, and you would like to share with our audience. And also, feel free to any last considerations. How can people follow you on social media, something like that? Absolutely, feel free. And again, thank you a lot for your time. We are, in fact, quite a lot ahead of time. I took a lot of your time. Sorry for that.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
But feel free to sum it up our conversation, please.
Oh, and we have time still, right? Okay,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
get comfortable. This is where I go long. Well, first, getting this opportunity to sit with you, thank you so much. And as I said before, I compliment you on your really wonderful questions because it makes all the difference in terms of the guests feeling like they're able to contribute to your podcast. So the questions were great, and it's one of those things where it allows me as a designer to really think about what am I doing with this career? What value do I have?
I appreciate it.
But that's where I will go with this. And it was part of my masterclass that I did with Saga just recently this weekend. I feel this as a teacher, as a guy getting older in life, as a father of two, one who is a Brazilian boy. My point of view is evolving in a way that what I now do as a creature designer or a designer in general has changed, because it is important that what you do has meaning to the audience. And so what is meaning? Because you must know what it is you're doing to know that you're tuning in a specific meaning. So there are choices that you can make if you're able to make those choices. And by that, I mean, if you're given an opportunity to work on a film, can you say yes or no to that opportunity? That's driven oftentimes by money. If you have enough money in the bank and a job comes to you that you don't want to do, you're able to say no, whatever the reasons are for not wanting to do that job. It's not in the right location, Bali, or it's not the subject matter that you want to do. And let's go with that for a second. It's not, there's no moral compass on this film, or it's a little too provocative in a way that I don't want it to be. And if you can't say no to it because you don't have enough money in the bank to ride it out until you can get the other job, that's a terrible position to be in. And it might be related to a position you put yourself in. So the first piece of advice I give people, aspiring people in general, but artists, is try and get yourself into a position where you have more control over things you get to choose. And sadly, that often involves money. But if you can just put enough in the bank to be able to say yes or no, that's so empowering. And let's pretend that that's occurring in your life. So now you get to say yes and no. When you are involved in a project, or when you're conceiving a project, whether you're a writer or you're an aspiring writer, or you're going to create stories yourself, whatever that may be, the most important thing that I'm doing now is making sure, if I have enough money in the bank, I can then say yes or no to myself. I'm going to create something, but that something needs to be mentally nutritious. It needs to be necessary, as opposed to I've always wanted to do this because I've always loved that genre, or I think this would be a cool movie that's like this other movie. And those are great things. And I'm referring to, are you going to do horror? Are you going to do violence? Are you going to do sexually provocative type material? Whatever it is. And I don't really care what your reasons are behind that. But for me, all I ask of my students or people that would be gracious enough to attend a masterclass like we did recently is to consider the ramifications of what it is you're trying to do. So we all have a choice to take our subject matter and evolve it such that if it's a violent film, but there's a message that makes people aware of something. They come in for the Big Mac, but they leave with a healthy Big Mac. They didn't ask for the healthy one. I'm providing you with a healthy one, but you're also getting the taste of your Big Mac. And that's pretty much my goal and journey from here on out, is to both act that way, be that person that I'm suggesting others to do. And it's not be like me. Other than where I would say be like me is just pay attention to your choices. Know that the privilege of working in Hollywood, which I do believe it is that you get to share a vision, a story, a viewpoint with a lot of people. That is now obviously a privilege, but a responsibility that shouldn't be squandered. How many times do we get to share an idea with hundreds of people? That's a privilege too. Thousands of people, now millions of people across the globe. Hold on. I better make sure that my message is of value. Now, if the value to you is millions of people are going to watch this, I can make a lot of money. And I'll see myself on TV doing, Cribs, if you remember that show. And, I got a Lamborghini and I got all this stuff. That's not really the right goal, in my opinion. If I have millions of people paying attention to me, I stop and go, okay, I have a responsibility to make sure that the message is in alignment with what I want to do. So that's why I say you can be like me in that regard, where I'm saying just be mindful of it. Where I choose, Neville chooses to be, is the messaging that gives you the entertainment that you wanted to have, that you're paying for. I'm going to deliver that product, but you're going to leave with a little something extra that hopefully will make you think differently as you move forward in your life. Mentally nutritious and necessary. So that's my proposal to young minds, is to just be aware of your decisions.
Do people who want to follow you, something like that, on Instagram or social media, where they can find you?
If you want to send me a message as to how much you hate what I've done on Star Trek in particular, the best way to reach me, honestly, I'm finding is through Instagram at this point. It's just my name, Neville Page. You'll find me. You can send me a direct message. Do I respond quickly to all of them? No. So bear with me. I try to. And appreciate the fact that sometimes it's difficult to respond to certain things, but I try and engage as much as I can. In terms of, like, if I may plug what I'm doing currently, and a reason to connect with me would be that, again, in the spirit of creating content, I'm at the point right now where there's consideration for production companies to spend a lot of money on some of the scripts that I've written, which is really wonderful. Has it happened? No, it may not happen for a bit, or it might happen when I get back tomorrow. You never know with the film industry. But the point is that I would love for people to pay attention to the journey that I'm on, only because I'm not looking for attention and points and praise at all. I'm looking for the opportunity for this things that I feel are important to share in terms of storytelling. I'm looking for the opportunity to share that with people so that the people who are being represented in those stories get the attention, get the lift, get the elevator being sent down for them. Because that is ultimately what this is about. You're sharing the wealth, that's education. If you're involved with storytelling, you're sharing somebody else's story. And you got to respect that. So when I say, please pay attention to me, that is to say, I want you to see what's coming up in terms of representing the underrepresented, in terms of representing stories that need to be told about people that have never had that chance to share their experiences. So I'm just a vehicle for other people. And that that is the dad in me. I'm here to serve you. And so that's why I say, if you want to look me up on Instagram, if you want to pay attention to my career, it's because other people, I think, are going to be represented. So I will take advantage of any voice that I have if it benefits others.
That's beautiful. And with that, we close our conversation. This is his Star Trek book, art book, and he's going to sign for me after it. And I hope you all enjoyed our conversation. I'm going to finish up in Portuguese, if you allow me.
I will not understand a word.
Espero que vocês tenham gostado. Lembrando que vocês podem assistir e ouvir o Nerdologia, tanto no YouTube quanto no Spotify. Compartilhem, né, espalhem a palavra do programa. Muito obrigado. E lembrando, para você que quiser, né, assistir a Masterclass dele, vai lá em saga.com.br/Neville e usa o cupom Nerdologia, certo? Muito obrigado e até a próxima, pessoal.